Midnight on Earth podcast with your host, Jake Weaver. Engineered by Cedric Swan. Hey everybody, we are back with another episode of Midnight on Earth. I'm your host, Jake Weaver, and we are here to bring you more knowledge, more light, and more love, and more incredible people with great information, with great stories. Today, we have Bernard Beitman on the show, and he's going to be talking about his most recent book, Life-Changing Synchronicities, A Doctor's Journey of Coincidence and Serendipity. So much to talk about there. A lot of coincidences. But before we do that, I need you to do something for me. Follow me on Instagram at midnight_on_earth. That is the address. You can follow me there. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you go to get your podcasts, click that button that connects us so you know exactly what's going on. When people come on with powerful stories, you get that notification instantly. And lastly, tell a friend, tell someone that you know loves these type of podcasts. Like, you know these people, they're in your life. Match our frequencies. You know what we're doing here. Bring them here. midnightonearth.com. Okay, so we're going to talk to Bernard in just a second, but first we're going to read his bio. Bernard Beitman, MD, a graduate of Yale Medical School, did his psychiatric residency at Stanford University. The former chair of psychiatry of the University of Missouri Columbia Medical School for 17 years. He writes a blog for Psychology Today on coincidence and is the co-author of the award-winning book, Learning Psychotherapy. The founder of the Coincidence Project, he currently lives in Charlottesville, Virginia, and he is here with us today. Hello, Bernard.
Hey, Jake, baby. How are you?
I'm feeling very good. I love it when I instantly resonate with a guest and the energy's positive, and here we are. Yes, feeling great.
Matching frequencies is so important, Jake. I mean, I'm so glad that you mentioned that in the outtake and in the beginning, that because we need to be able to find ways to do just what you're saying, resonate with each other, which is matching, not the same necessarily, but being harmonic in our frequency matching.
Absolutely. You will never be able to convince someone of something, change someone's thinking without coming from a place of love. And love, in a sense, is that resonance. So if you're coming with love, the love frequency, it's correlating, it's modulating to match the person so you can have this really positive conversation. But coming at it with a different energy, there's nothing happening. So nobody's going to listen to you. There's no change. There's no meaningful growth from it.
Agreed. Very nice.
So tell me how you started writing this book. Why did you want to focus on synchronicities and coincidences?
Well, this is my third coincidence book. So this one is different from the previous two. The first one was connecting with coincidence, and it was just me trying to figure out just all the different stories people had. The second one was to create a new science of meaningful coincidence, trying to develop a taxonomy. Science starts with description. So I try to describe all the different kinds of ways of thinking about meaningful coincidences, which pretty much are: how do you use them personally, and how do you explain them? It was a little bit more textbooky, but also self-help. This book, Life-Changing Synchronicities, is turned on its head of the previous books, where these are my stories in my life. And while looks like a an autobiography. It looks like a memoir, which it is, but it's more than that. It's intended to be a mirror for the reader to look at his or her own experiences to see how well they match some of mine, which is a way of confirming that these are common events in people's lives. Because I'm just another guy, but look, I went to Yale. I went to Swarthmore College, which is a good one. I played football, scouted by the Oakland Raiders, and to get that far, I tried out for the Pittsburgh Pirates in baseball. I was a good athlete as well as a good student, and I went to good schools. So I've kind of been polished by American tradition to be able to be refined and clear in the way I think about things. And there was no better education in my life than Haight Street in the late 60s. It was like you could feel the souls trying to get into that place. It was just such fun being a part-time hippie while being a resident at an outstanding university, Stanford. So I could go up to the big city, go from the heat of Palo Alto up into the cool fog of the city, 15 degrees drop, and I felt so much more relaxed going into the city, going up 280 from Palo Alto, and that didn't take the Bayshore very much, if you know those part of that part. And then I could then be welcomed into the psychedelic experience, the Grateful Dead, all the other rock bands that were just starting back then, and learn to dance with the other hippies and learn more about astrology and tarot cards. And so those experiences are recorded in this book, along with some athletic ones and a lot of other ones, including dance experiences, to try to suggest that I've had a wide range of meaningful coincidences, some of which I hope will match the frequencies of our readers.
Right, because people need affirmations. Because even if you have a firm belief about something and you fully integrated it, reading an affirmation, experiencing an affirmation still gives you a charge. It still does something to solidify your perspective. And that's what this book is for people that have these natural experiences. That's what coincidences and synchronicities are. They're part of the natural world. They just don't necessarily fit in with the 3D matrix kind of mainstream thinking. However, they are acknowledged by some of the greatest psychologists of all time. But for you had experiences early on that prepped you, that prompted you for being in that early psychedelic area in the 60s. Like you said, you had a residency at Stanford. There were things already happening to you before you even landed in San Francisco. Now, tell us about that briefly and then how you ended up there.
Well, how I got to San Francisco, let's do that one, because there's a lot of other stuff behind it. Because I like that. I really like that part of it. No, I don't get asked about it that much. So when I was a medical student at Yale, they gave us money to go do research someplace. And I said, whoa. And that was a lot of money. They gave us $500 to go do research someplace.
So this was like a grant. This was like a student grant.
A student grant. You had to write a paragraph and they gave you $500 because Yale was trying to create researchers as much as anything else, not practitioners so much. So like $500. So I got connected with an internal medicine guy in Los Angeles. I really wanted to go to San Francisco because I was reading about Ken Kesey and the electric Kool-Aid acid test. But I said I want to go to San Francisco. So I got this connection in L.A. And how am I going to get to L.A. from New Haven? I didn't have a car. Didn't have much money. I was on scholarship. So like, how am I going to do that? So I found a guy who was riding a Volkswagen, his Volkswagen, to LA. So, hey, I'll go along with you. We can drive together and pay some of the gas and stuff. So we ended up in Arizona. Not that we ended up, we were passing through it. And I said, wait a minute, we're getting close to LA. I don't know where I'm going to stay. I don't know anybody in LA. What am I going to do? So I call this friend of mine from college and I say, anybody in LA? And she says, oh, yeah, it's got Bob, blah, blah, blah. He lives at 36 in Vermont near USC. Contact him. Hey, Bob, can I stay with you for a couple of days? I'm coming into LA. He's a classmate of mine at Swarthmore. He says, sure. I said, okay. So this guy drops me off in his Volkswagen at 36 in Vermont at this address. And I go in the back of this big house where he's got an apartment. And I knock on his door, say, hey, Bob, it's Bernie. Oh, come on in. He gives me a place to stay. And he says, oh, by the way, the woman who owns this house that I'm renting this apartment from is a mystic. I say, oh, really? A mystic? I read about that in Philosophy 1 in college, mysticism. I said, I kind of heard about that. I've been wondering, what is that? So I politely go around to the front door, and one of the key ideas I try to communicate is knock on strangers' doors and see what happens. It's like taking a chance on chance, and you just see what happens. So I went around the front and I knocked on the door and I said, "Hi. I hear you're a mystic." This woman in her 40s in a colorful kind of house dress came out. I said, I hear you're a mystic. And she says, you're the second one. I said, what is that, second one? I didn't know. It turned out I was a second applicant for their developing a mystical organization based on the work of Aleister Crowley, but I had no idea about that. I said I wanted to have a mystical experience. So she says, well, come back at midnight on Wednesday and we'll give you a mystical experience. I said, okay. So I picked up this chick somewhere, I don't know where, but she and I were riding around on my Honda S90 that I bought in LA to get around that city. And we went to the beach and we had no money, and some guy bought us some drinks, and I took her back up into the Hollywood Hills, dropped her off, and came back to 36 in Vermont near USC, and knocked on the same door and said, what about this mystical experience? So she said, coming back. And we went back in the kitchen, and she gave me a glass of milk, at the bottom of which was this blue liquid. I said, what's that? She said, it's called LSD. I said, well, I think I read about that in Look magazine. Something about Timothy Leary and Andrew Weil or something. And it's just like something, I don't know, that's the best I could do. I didn't know much about it. So I drink this liquid at midnight, and I don't remember much what happened, but it was what we call far out and groovy. We ended up saying that so often we had to say farm out just to play with it. Farm out. It was farm out. It was far out. So, okay. So as dawn hit, I'm sitting there in her living room with my hands held out like this. You know that cat's cradle game where you put the strings between your fingers and you kind of stretch them?
Sure.
It was like I was doing that with energy bands between my fingers. I saw these green and gold energy bands between my fingers, and I was saying, oh, look at that. They can stretch and they come together. I'm looking, and this chick that's there also on acid as part of this group puts her hand between my hands, and it's like the prow of a boat going through the waves, and she bent the waves with her hand. Wow. And that was kind of evidence. That was evidence that I was seeing human electromagnetic energy right there. I saw it. It was real.
Right.
And that was the part of the beginning of my understanding, as I write later in the book about dancing and the energy that goes between dancers, and could feel it somewhat consciously when I was dancing to the Grateful Dead and some of these other other bands out there. So we go out to Death Valley, I think, somewhere out in the desert afterwards. And I see her standing there in that same pink and something red house dress, and she's crying. And I'm saying, "What are you crying about?" And she says, "I feel so much love. And my tears are filling this dried out creek. And I'm hoping that my tears will fill the world with the love that I am feeling now." Wow. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. So I walk away from that and then become more part of their mystical organization, learn about Aleister Crowley, learn about astrology and tarot cards, and that prepared me for life as a hippie. When I hit San Francisco in 1968, I could speak astrology and tarot cards. In fact, I had a tarot card deck based on the Book of Thoth, Crowley's book, tarot card deck that he imagined and someone else designed. And I had this Xerox copy, was black and white, all in sheets that I had to cut out. So I got each card, and I'd sit in a basement in the Berkeley Hills when I was an intern, smoking various degrees of weed, grass as we called it. There was like plain Mexican, there was Michoacan, and there was the primo stuff that there are still seeds about called Panama Red.
Oh, it's still out there, yes.
Yes, they kept the seeds, and we didn't know it was all sativa. We didn't know there was indica, so it was like, so I'd hierarchize my smoking, starting with the regular and then Michoacan, and then hit it with the red, and I would under a lamp at a table in this basement place off the garage, I would stare at these tarot cards and try to understand the connection between the numbers of each tarot card, the Hebrew letters of each tarot card. There are 22 major trumps, and each trump card has a Hebrew letter associated with it, and each Hebrew letter has a meaning. And I would try to see how that number, that Hebrew letter, that astrological sign that's associated with that card, and the image on the card all fit together.
Interesting.
That was a puzzle. It was a puzzle I tried to solve while smoking this stuff. And I got deeply involved with no text. There was no written text by then. The Book of Thoth textbook didn't come out until a couple of years later. I discovered it much after that. So I got to know these cards from black and white things before there was the Crowley way of influencing me to think about how he thought about them.
Interesting. And this was all, again, in this kind of intuitive state where you're just kind of getting to the self, moving away from sensory information in a linear sense, and just really kind of divining these definitions of the cards.
Absolutely. 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 Just, they were a dance, Jake. They're a dance. The words, the images, the letters, the numbers, the astrological signs all fit together somehow. That was the idea, that they all fit together. That heightened my ability to see coincidences because I could start seeing connections that maybe other people didn't see.
Right, like multidimensional correlations, symbolism, words, experiences, all of it coming together, but not in a way that's like, again, linear, but more quanta.
Well, you use that word, and I kind of go with quanta because I don't know what it means. It's like it almost gets to God, and other.
It kind of does, yes.
And the reason I say that, Jake, is that people have different definitions of God, also even of random, and also of quantum. And I still like the idea of Richard Feynman, a renowned physicist, saying, if you say you understand quantum physics, you don't. It's too hard to make sense out of. So people have taken this entanglement thing and generalized it to macroscopic, which to bigger. The entanglement's about particles really small, electrons and light and photons. They're getting it up to boron molecules and maybe bigger, so they become entangled. But what does it mean to be entangled at our human level? It's a good metaphor, and I use it. It's a metaphor for you and me getting entangled right now, which means getting connected with each other as we keep talking.
Yes, energetically.
Energetically, I can feel how deeply you are listening to me, and I feel it in my heart as well as my mind, and that connects us, and that is providing what I would define as entanglement.
Yes, I totally agree with that, because entanglement is just essentially this incredible connection, and it transcends time and space. It transcends even seeing a person that day or week. For instance, you talk about in your book how you had the experience when your father passed and graduated to the next dimension. You had a choking feeling. That is quantum entanglement.
Again, I prefer to think of it in the old definition of telepathy. Telepathy meant feeling at a distance, tele-distance pathy feeling. And explaining telepathy, I don't do quantum, but I think you're implying a kind of field that connects us. And I think as I listen to how you use the term, I begin to get clearer about how you define it. And yes, we are part of something bigger. And that bigger can be, the universe. Oh, what's the universe? What do you mean by the universe? Or the oneness? We're part of what I want to think of at this level where I am doing it, part of the collective human mind.
Yes.
Your mind and my mind are entangling more deeply now than we ever have, because we never met each other before, but we've both loved the entangling of each other, the connections, the feeling of being able to communicate between ourselves, and the feeling we get with that communication. That's what I go for with relationships.
Exactly. And again, the quantum term is being thrown around a lot, like you're saying, but really it's just kind of suggesting that there's this other set of information, and there's ways to access that information. That's kind of all we can really say. And that information may connect with things we haven't discovered or can even understand yet.
And I'm glad you use it as a cover word. As is the proper use of it. We pretend like we know what we're talking about when we say quantum, but we don't. And that's why I try to clarify what the person who's talking with me means by the word quantum.
Sure.
Because the way Deepak Chopra means it with his non-locality is pretty confusing to me.
Very much so. I agree with that.
And it continues to bother me that people do that as he does, as if he knows what he's talking about. We are communicating non-locally right now. Yeah,
I don't really want to say anything negative, but I will say there has been some things exposed about Deepak Chopra and kind of some of his... I don't want to say anything. I'll just say that, is that a valid source of information for anyone? I'm not sure.
Thank you for being not sure. That's enough. That's enough.
But I will say, let's get back to the incredible 60s. Look, I am a huge Grateful Dead fan. I had Bob Weir's sister on the show. She channels Jerry's Oversoul and has had incredible communications. We'll have to talk about that after the interview. But being there at the center of it all, like you said, you felt like there were souls kind of climbing over each other trying to manifest during that time. What was that like? You really felt that. Tell me more about that.
Well, first of all, do you know what kind of car that Jerry Garcia drove?
Oh, which during that era?
Yeah.
Oh man, this is like one piece of Grateful Dead trivia that is like escaping me out of every single thing else I know. It was like an old beater truck or maybe like a student. Oh man, I don't know. Go for it.
A Volvo 122S.
Okay. Yeah, I knew it was something. I was something boxy.
Yeah, you got it. And I still have my Volvo 122S 1968 from that time.
Wow. Same model.
It's out there in the driveway right now. It needed a little wash, so the rain came around and gave it a nice wash. It was nice of it to do it. So I think it was red that he had. Mine's dark blue, and mine is called my Volvo is called the Bolt. I call it the Bolt, and why do I call it the Bolt? Because there were comic book characters a little before that time. You know how they'd have comic book gangs or good guys.
I mean,
and like the old cowboys used to ride around like the Rough Riders and stuff. And one of the characters in one of those groups was called the Black Bolt. The Black Bolt. And the Black Bolt didn't talk unless he wanted something to happen. If he whispered, the ground trembled. If he talked out loud, buildings shook. So he had to be careful about what he said. And for some reason, I liked calling it the Bolt. I wanted it to be black, but it's dark blue.
It's the Blue Bolt.
It's the Blue Bolt. It's the Blue Bolt. But anyway, they didn't have black for me.
But you really feel like it was an epicenter of consciousness happening. Like there was some new energy coming in and converging on that location.
No way to know that because I was in the middle of it, and all I was doing was being an intern in San Francisco, being married to a past president of the American Psychoanalytic Association's daughter, and saying, and this is 1968, what am I doing being married when all that stuff is going on out there? 1968, the summer of 68, we get there. And so somehow we separate, and she goes back to New York City, and I hit the streets. And that's when it all started. I started somehow getting involved with hippies. And the real beginning of that, the real place it happened, was between my internship and my residency. I had a week off, and I never had a week off in a long time where I hadn't to be any place. So I was riding in my Blue Bolt in the 122S 1968 Volvo around the Golden Gate Park, and there's Stanyon, which goes along the park, and it's near like this place that grows a lot of flowers indoors. And it's right where Fell and Oak come in to where the park is. And I was riding around in that area, and I see this hippie chick with her thumb out. And I said, I got nothing to do. So again, this is like taking a chance on chance kind of thing. I'll pick up this and see what happens. And so she gets in a car. And it's a beautiful outfit she's got. And we're talking. She says, where are you going? I said, I don't know. And she says, hey, let's go over to Berkeley. I'm going to the street festival over in Berkeley. And I say, oh, okay. So we can go over the Golden Gate. We go over the bridge, not the Golden Gate, the Oakland Bay Bridge, and go over to Berkeley. And we hit this festival in the streets. So it was fun. And I get to know her name, Paula. And we become friends. Paula is the name of the person I was married to who left San Francisco, named Paula. My father used to have a girlfriend in Germany named Paula. So it's kind of like a family name of girlfriends. And Paula and I got to know each other. So she kind of lives near Haight Street, in the Haight Street district, kind of near there, and I go visit her, She comes from a wealthy family south of the city, but she's being a hippie, kind of against her family's wishes. And she's got a problem with her back. And she wanted me around because I'm a doctor, and she thinks she broke her back because she was doing black magic about money.
Right. I remember you saying that in the book. That's wild.
So I mean, a lot of this stuff I didn't understand. I just was accepting it. And she had, I think her husband, that we called Crazy Arthur, who lived with her. And Crazy Arthur had a bracelet on one of his wrists that had all the astrology signs on it. So he had 12 astrology signs. So over a 24-hour period, he would turn his bracelet so the upper part of it would be the same astrological sign as the rising sign at that time. And the rising sign is the sign that is on the horizon of Earth as the Earth is rotating.
Right.
It's the rising sign. And the rising sign often has something to do with your own personal rising sign, of how you appear in public, what your persona looks like. Like Cancer rising, and also Cancer itself as a sun sign, tends to be people who reflect back other people's feelings and ideas. It's a reflecting idea, that Cancer. So that was Crazy Arthur, and he's part of this story because he becomes the ending of my hippie days. But after I got introduced to that group, and there was another guy with a beard who was really funny too, and they were both of them were like sprites. And Paula says, "I'm going to make you a hippie." So she takes me over to Union Street to some of these hippie stores, and she gets me to buy some suede leather pants, a see-through gray ruffled shirt, and a red leather vest, light red. I go to the Army Navy store on Haight Street and get some boots. So that becomes my hippie outfit, which she introduces me to various people, including Captain Bill, who's living at the Yellow Submarine, which is one of those, I don't know if you remember, but one of these railroad apartments that are really long with rooms off to the side.
I have seen those, yes.
And you have been around those. Well, he lived in there with his first mate, Liz, who was a 19-year-old high school dropout, and Thaddeus Golas, who I hope you've heard of. Thaddeus Golas wrote The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment. You know that book?
I am familiar with it.
Well, Thaddeus was there. He worked for like a publishing company in New York City, and came to San Francisco and just took a lot of acid and wrote this book that is a highly condensed version of how to be enlightened and how you go from being condensed to like regular to being more ethereal. And you can move through these phases, and he describes how you can do that. Well, I couldn't really read a lot of the book. I didn't understand it, but I certainly understood going with Thaddeus and Bill one day. Thaddeus says, "Let's go dance. Let's go to the dance." So I say, okay, because I'm living with them. I lived with them for about 3 weeks. And as I said, "Oh, let's go to dance." I said, okay. So we all take some acid and go to the Fillmore, which was easy to walk to. And we walk up the stairs. It's an upstairs ballroom. And we walk in, there's a bunch of hippies dancing. And it was so beautiful to see how they were all moving to the music. It was all this kind of, again, this kind of unitary kind of, we're all part of the same vibe thing. And I look over to the guitar player on stage, and it's Jerry Garcia. And Jerry Garcia is playing his guitar, and his guitar is, to me, has a light shining on it, not just from where the Fillmore, but a higher light. And it's if it's the hand of God moving the hippies to his music.
I think this is why we all love Jerry Garcia, because he was able to channel in that way. He was a very learned, metaphysical, spiritual person in his own right, in addition to being like boots on the ground, frontline psychedelic soldier, essentially going to city with his friends and creating this other reality that you could go into and experience those energies. I bet that was really profound for you, because it was like a third eye opening experience. You get all these experiences stacked up, and then suddenly, like you're saying, your frequency changes, you're moving into a new being. But intermixed in all of this growth and all of this development is nonstop synchronicities and coincidences. And that's really what struck you.
Yes, there's a lot of them. That is, as you could feel, and as I can feel from you, one of the most profound, I'll call it, coincidences I've had, to be able to walk in there and see the correlation between Jerry's playing and the hippies dancing. And me just walking into this and getting immersed in the energy. That's why I know there's there's not just interpersonal, but there's group energy, because it was there.
Yes. So, I mean, just to add to this really quick, my friend now, Wendy Weir, Bob Weir's sister, she took Joseph Campbell to a Grateful Dead show and had a whole experience about that, which we talked about on the episode that we recorded. Joseph Campbell knew himself that this was an expression of the Dionysian ritual, perhaps Americanized or Westernized, but it was a place to experience group collective consciousness, not just with the dancers and the music itself, but with the musicians and what they were channeling. Everyone was in awe of what was coming through and what we were all witnessing.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you very much for that. It gives me a better sense of what my experience was.
Wow. Well, I mean, it happened for so many people, and this is why it was so special for America, because in America, there was really nothing like this, where you can go have a ritualistic experience with a structure where there was one set, there was a set break, which is like fellowship. You meet your friends, your new friends, high on psychedelics. You had the second set to take you even farther on a shamanic journey, and then to bring you back home. And people needed that. There was nowhere else in America during the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s where you could go with tens of thousands of other humans and have a magical, ritualistic, shamanic experience in that way.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That really helps explain a lot of stuff to me.
Yeah, it's a big part of my life, honestly. This is part of the reason I got into occult things, spiritual things, metaphysical things, is because of the freedom that was found in that scene. And then later, after Jerry died, the jam band community that sprung up with the various other bands and surviving members. But tell me about how this applied to your general psychiatry. So you have this like amazing foundation. It's a metaphysical, it's a magical foundation as you go into conventional medicine. Tell me how that worked.
Before I tell you that, I got to tell you about the other memorable experience with the Grateful Dead.
Please. We have plenty of time.
I got to do it. You probably have heard of the Family Dog.
Yes,
if you
of
know
course.
anything
Yes.
about it. A lot of people don't. The Family Dog was a small venue out near the ocean at the end of Golden Gate Park. And there'd be bands playing out there. I mean, it was a kind of a regular thing out there. And I just remember this one time that I go out there. I don't know who's playing. I just want to go. probably taken some acid again. And it's this local band named the Grateful Dead. I mean, they weren't well known. This is like another local band. So I go out there. This is before I hit the Fillmore with them. And like so they're playing this music. It's kind of like, oh, it's all right. And we're dancing. It kind of didn't get to me quite. But the funny thing was, after they played, the group who played after them during their break was Hell's Angels Band.
Oh my God.
The Hell's Angels Band. And you could imagine they were hitting those drums really hard.
And a juxtaposition of energies for sure.
Oh, what a juxtaposition of energies. So that was one thing. And one more thing from the family. One thing for the family dog. I met this guy. I met this guy. I don't know how we connect. He's a big guy. He's kind of spiritual, and he's got this big red leather hat. And I really like this hat. It's got some biblical name on it. I'm trying to remember. And he gives it to me. So I'm wearing this hat, and I go out to the family dog one time, and somebody had put number 5 on my forehead. And I hardly remembered it. And somebody said, "Where are the other 4?" And so I wasn't paying attention to it. It's just one of those these are random sums. I'm telling you, they're not cohesive. They're just like these moments of weirdness that happen so often out there. It was just like weird was common. It was these things. So afterwards, it was like 2 a.m. And how are the hippies going to get back from the ocean back into the city? And look around, and there's a guy with a car, a 122S dark blue Volvo. And so I drove through the park back into the city with 11 hippies in my car.
Wow.
I was over to the side trying to stick shift. It has 4 gears to it and hit the clutch. And a bunch of them in the front and a bunch of them in the back. I don't remember how we did it, but the car's still here and so am I.
Wow.
So we got there.
That's amazing. So historical. You didn't probably realize then how profound each one of those experiences were as we're moving in now to 2026 or 2025 now.
I was just doing it. It was like a lot of fun and it was interesting. But as you're really implying by your earlier question, I was doing this not just because I was some kid who wanted to run away from home and heard about San Francisco and living on the streets kind of thing. I wasn't doing that. I was doing the legitimate thing of being a resident at Stanford,
right,
while I was doing some of this stuff. And so I had this solidity of having taken acid when I was relatively older, never taken any weed before that. That was my first drug experience. And so it was all like, you can look back at it as like preparation for what you and I are talking about now, right, is to be able to bring synchronicity into the awareness of the global mind. And that's what I'm working on now, is a book that includes self-awareness, the self-observer, that activating each of our self-observers. You can observe your own mind. I can tell. And you're observing your own mind because you've taken enough drugs to be able to look at your drug, even though you didn't do it today and you've told us that. So, okay, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, you know that. So you've learned to be able to self-observe. Your self-observer is active. A lot of people don't have an active self-observer, and some of those who do don't even know they have one. They just use it. So I'm trying to be able to say, activate your self-observer through synchronicity, because synchronicity makes you have to pay attention to what comes into your mind and to what's already in your mind. So you have to find matches between what's outside and what's inside and see what those matches might mean to you personally and what they might tell you about how reality works.
So you think it's a language. It's not just the language of the divine or the universe trying to tell you something. It's something internal. It's a correspondence between the two that creates these synchronicities that are trying to help you. Are they trying to guide you? Is it sometimes playful or all of the above?
And sometimes problematic, all of the above, and sometimes problematic. I mean, in my second book, Meaningful Coincidences, I write a chapter about the negative sides of synchronicity, because we have to pay attention to that. I'm a doctor.
Right.
I tend to look for the negative because that's what we do, look for pathology. So I know if something's positive, this is a polarized world, ladies and gentlemen. We live in a polarity here. Everything is got an opposite here. The yin yang thing is so true. And within the opposite is the opposite sometimes too. So this is polarity. So synchronicity ain't all fun and games. It's got some downsides. And sometimes they are correlated with people being crazy. They see too many of them. People who are manic sometimes see too many of them. They get overwhelmed. Right. Some schizophrenics see too many of them. But a lot of normal people see them. So I've had the pleasure, coming back to the 60s, Jake, come back to the 60s. I've had the pleasure as a first-year resident of being called into the office by another first-year resident named Bob. Last name will only mean that he's in Portland, Oregon right now, and you probably don't know him, but he's there, so I won't mention his last name, but I might have mentioned his book. So Bob, very, very polite Bob, says, Bernie, in his office, Bernie, all this stuff you're doing with tarot cards and astrology, I think you're psychotic and you need help.
That's kind of a judgment, I would say.
I would kind of say it's the same judgment. Jake, it's the same judgment going on these days by mental health people. They still do the same thing. So I could be clever sometimes. So I say, Bob, your father's a minister. So I'm doing what your father is doing. I'm trying to help people come closer to God.
Right.
He had nothing to say, and I walked out.
Wow. So it's interesting how paradigms work, and people get programmed these various things, and then they apply them to their reality and these judgments and this fear, and none of it's real.
Well, we can talk about what's really real, too. And I like to judge what's real by what's useful. It's my favorite way of doing things. And if calling me crazy is useful, it was, because I get to tell the story that it happened to me. I'm not only talking about me now, I'm talking about other people for whom that is still happening. So it's, again, like my book is attempting to be this life-changing synchronicities, a mirror for the reader to be able to see themselves, and this story is one of those ways.
Right. And it is very sad when you think about schizophrenic people, or like you said, people trapped in mania, because in a way it's not their fault. There's something about their energetic self, their biology, that is allowing more information to come into their conscious mind than they can process, than a normal human can process. It's just far beyond their capabilities. So sometimes it comes out in fragments. Then they get judged, they get medicated. A lot of different things can happen, but really it's just a processing issue. And that's where it should be addressed.
Boy, you said that better than I ever have.
Well, I mean, we're here together. This is me and you together. It's two minds. So you're saying you're just influencing me with all of your energies and positive information. But these coincidences, I mean, there's something there that's beyond the person itself. Like, how does conventional psychology or psychiatry talk about synchronicities and coincidences?
They don't.
But they have to acknowledge them. Like we said, Carl Jung, I mean, so many people do put them out there in mainstream psychology. Is it something that's just kind of like a fringe theory, even though it's fairly mainstream?
Yeah, and Jung gets quoted a lot because he's got his collective unconscious. He's got his four personality types that get used a lot. Made a scale out of it that's used all the time. But even his Jungian followers don't do synchronicity very much. They talk about Jungian psychology more about individuation and archetypes rather than synchronicity. They stay away from it. And I was surprised at that. Jungians don't go for synchronicity.
That's like one of his core tenets. That's like when you say Jung, you think about those three things. Like, what?
That's what you do. That's what you do, Jake. But these, it's like Freud would often say after a while that he's not a Freudian, and Jung was not a Jungian. I mean, his Jungians were not Jungian. Jung was not a Jungian because synchronicity he knew was his major contribution to world consciousness. He made a lot of other contributions. He got AA started. He understood the collective unconscious, which is still a very primitive thing. The archetypes that are pretty rigidified now, there's a lot more of them. Could be more debate. It's kind of, people kind of make doctrines out of stuff that needs to keep evolving.
Right.
So, but he had some good ideas, but synchronicity was his leading idea. His follower, Marie-France, knew that. It was his best. And why don't they want to pay attention, Jake? Why don't they want to pay attention to Jung's major contribution?
I think we know the answer to that because it disrupts just essentially linear, one-way mainstream thinking. Humans love to feel like we have everything figured out. Every generation throughout history felt like they had it all figured out, or they were pretty close. Even now, we've got it all figured out. Oh, we've almost got it, but we're still so much in our infancy. And when you see these things, these true realities like synchronicities, and they contain information that's so multidimensional that it shocks the three-dimensional brain, it's hard for people to process. They can't let people stretch in that way. They have to keep them in these very fitted educational boxes. That's what I think.
Well, try this phrase, because I love it. Synchronicity can be an ontological shock.
Yes. Yes.
Where ontology refers to your view of reality.
Right. Yes.
And in my terms, which is the direction you were just talking, you went further out than I will right now, is that it makes you have to think your mind is not only in your skull.
Yes.
Because there's a connection between events of your mind and events in your surroundings. How could that be?
Right, but that shouldn't be threatening. It should be inspiring. It should be motivating us to explore more. But humans, we have this lower brain function, this reptilian brain function that really wants things that just kind of stay the way they are. We like comfort, repetition, plateaus. But there's that neofrontal cortex that's saying, please, people, come on, notice all this stuff. Let's grow together. Let's make humanity even more than we are now.
You could make a song out of that
one, baby. But this is also a personal experience, too. Synchronicities and these coincidences, they happen for people collectively. People notice certain things like, when they're seeing it externally, like happening to someone else. But the coincidences and the synchronicities themselves are a personal experience. And the more personal they are, the more intense they are. And the more intense they are, the more life-changing they can be in some cases.
Definitely. Definitely, they can be very life-changing, as are many of the ones in my book, Life-Changing Synchronicities. That's the idea, and they're not all life-changing. Some of them are pretty funny. It's like they're just like you get to play with the Joker out there, Mercury, you can call all kinds of different names, Hermes. There's all kinds of different Jokers going out there, and it's kind of like peeks around the corner and kind of like say, okay, what did I mean here? What happened to this? How did that happen? I mean, what you were describing, I'll put in my simpler terms earlier, is that people stay with what they stay. There's a great inertia in the human mind and wants to keep doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And what you've got and what I have is a sense of they ain't telling us what's going on around here. And I am curious about what's going on around here. I am curious about the nature of reality and synchronicity, meaningful coincidences. The meaning of them are clues to how reality works. And that's so important. Clues to how reality works.
Right. And it's clues also that information exists in other dimensions, clearly, because it's not third dimensional. This is coming from other places that synchronize with what you're experiencing. Now, this actually kind of plays into something I really wanted to tell you about. I had a guest on who had the most amazing explanation of synchronicities, and he's the only one I've ever heard say it this way. So essentially, Jose Arguelles started the Law of Time Foundation. Are you familiar with that?
That name is very familiar, but no, not the foundation.
He was one of the biggest guys out there before he passed. He actually passed before 2012, but he was one of the big names out there, you know, really putting forward the 2012 concept based around Mayan cosmology. And he was like a huge voice, the 13-month calendar, the 13-moon calendar, how everything is kind of on this other time. So he created this concept that was carried forward by the Law of Time Foundation, that we are not in natural time, that we are in our own self-created time flow, which is outside of universal time, which is the time that the universe and everything else is working on. But we're on this Gregorian time, or however we're choosing to divide days, months, seasons, all of that now is definitely and 100% not in sync with universal time. And what he's saying from his perspective is that these synchronicities are actually an expression of true universal time. So when we experience these things, they're actually coming from the place where that truth exists. And we're here in the matrix and we're living our life in this way, thinking it is this way. But that other true world that contains the all and everything else is showing us through synchronicities and these coincidences that we are existing in an artificial time. What do you think about that?
Well, again, it's my way of thinking about things is like humanity is on a suicidal course right now. And I like to think that our ability to be conscious, that is to have our self-observers active and know that we do, is an important part of the evolution of something in the universe. So I just like to think that. I mean, I can be wrong, but this is my way of thinking about it.
Sure.
I love humanity, and I love love. I love love that goes on the dance floor last night. Man, me and Misty were like, I just love when that happens on the dance floor and other places too. And it does happen in other places. It's like, I think we're here to experience three-dimensional love.
Yes.
I mean, that's part of, and it gets timeless. I mean, the time dancing with her was just intermittently, time was around, and that happens several times every once in a while. I look forward to those times. So I think there's something about trying to preserve humanity and its consciousness on this planet that's important to me.
Absolutely.
Okay, you agree with that?
Absolutely. I love humanity. I'm fully on that frequency.
So tell me, please, Jake, how does this idea about time, that we are living definitely in a made up kind of container, just some of these times and months were made for tax purposes by Roman emperors. August for Augustus. I mean, they're trying to. This whole thing is to keep us as wage earners and give the emperor on top the money. That's part of what happened here. But it also organizes us so that you and I can have a conversation within a time frame, and people can know when you're on, and that we can come through this matrix and get to other places. Like the painter Gray helps us get to those with his visuals.
Oh, Alex Gray. You're talking about Alex Gray.
Yes, Alex Gray. I mean, here we have, I was looking at the moon, the this is nothing like peeing at night outside under a moon. So to be able to do that and have the moon up there and looking like a portal to another dimension, because we can find that way to a different time. It's around us. The portals are there, and it's our choice to be able to find our way through to get to it. And I'm looking forward to taking some DMT. I haven't done it.
Oh, it's fascinating. You should.
Well,
you can get there naturally. I've learned over the years how to get there naturally with breath work, and also certain light therapies activate the DMT in your brain.
Well, I've done holotropic breathing and gotten out there with it, but I'm a psychiatrist. I take drugs. What can I do? Well, I give drugs.
Well, I do want to get back to that question I asked you earlier. Just very, very briefly, just tell me how all of this foundation, your metaphysical mind, your psychedelic mind, how did that help you when you went into mainstream psychiatry?
It didn't. But it kind of did, because I became open to chance.
Okay.
I just became aware that things can pop up. Like, as you probably read in the book, when my girlfriend, then to become my wife, Paula, and I moved from San Francisco to Seattle, that was when there were signs that said, the last person leaving Seattle, please turn out the lights. Boeing was the only major employer, and Boeing was going under again, and there was plenty of jobs. So I was writing this book on psychotherapy, and I got bored. So I got on my bike and knocked on the door of the chair of psychiatry at the University of Washington and said, hey, you got any jobs? And he says, I got 5 of them.
Oh,
it's
wow.
Not true anymore. I got 5 of them. Pick one, he says. So I picked the one to go to be attending on an inpatient unit, because that's where the greatest need seemed to be. They needed somebody to be attending. I went to Bernie's, which was a store, my name's Bernie, in North Seattle, and bought a lime green suit with one of those high-heeled shoes, multicolored, and got a fancy tie. And that's the way I went to work sometimes, just to show how I was still like lost someplace. And that I did for a year, and then moved to I said, I don't want to do this anymore, and went to the outpatient department, where again, I insisted on working half time. So after 3 years, the chairman, Carl Eisdorfer, calls me in his office and says, you can't work half time anymore. I said, I'm working on my book. He says, you can't work half time. You've got to work full time. I said, okay, I'll quit, because I need to work on my book the other half time. Okay. So I quit. He said, I cried, and I went to the vice chairman, and he supported me and got sued me. And a couple of months later, it was like getting near June or something. It was May. And I went back to Eisdorfer's office, and there's the serendipity. This is like taking a chance on chance. So I went back to Eisdorfer's office, knock, knock, knock. And I said, Carl, I want to tell you how much I appreciated working for you. Now, who does that? I mean, the guy kicks you out, and I go back and say, "Thank you very much for kicking me out, for working for you," and he says, "Oh, we need a guy to work on the consultation service 2 days a week." I said, "I'll do it 1 day a week, and I'll stay in the outpatient department a half day." So I get a full-time salary was $32,500, up from my 16 or 33,
with less time.
With still. No, with a little more time because I had to do a half a day of consultation service. So it was 5 half days plus another half day. I'm doing that. And so I stayed on until for a total of 10 years. And then I came up for promotion. Because you have to after 6 or 7 years. I'd written enough papers, I thought, but the faculty voted a mere 3 for my promotion and 11 against me, which wasn't much of a vote of enthusiasm. So I went to the acting dean who I play softball with and said, "Can you do anything about it?" He says, 3 to 11, I can't do much about. So I knocked on the door of Wayne Caton on my way out. A colleague there, and I saw, and this is another serendipity, a piece of paper on his desk, and a paper written by Bass and Wade on chest pain and psychiatric disorders. And I said, "Wayne, what's going on here?" And he had this 1-page protocol of evaluating patients with chest pain who didn't have heart disease. It's just 1 page. I said, "Hey, Wayne, can I have a copy of that?" Well, I took that, and when I went to the University of Missouri, I got there with this protocol to work with cardiologists, and it turned out that the cardiology clinic back door was open to the back door of the psychiatry clinic. It was right across the hall. So the patients from cardiology could sneak across the hall to psychiatry. Nobody would see them. And with that and some other collaboration with cardiologists, I got 40 papers on chest pain and panic disorder, which then got me to be chairman of psychiatry for 17 years.
Wow.
I hope that gives you an idea about serendipities.
Yes.
Wayne Caton, across the hall, cardiology, and then the other stuff that happened in between. So I was still following the meaningful coincidence thing. I was open to the possibility.
And then it kept leading you to more and more growth. But in the greater sense, what do you think all of these synchronicities and all of these coincidences are just trying to tell you personally? What do you think it's doing for your development? Why was it there for just you?
Hey, Jake, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why they're here for me. And I'm saying it like this because a lot of people like to say they is on some kind of mission from God. Perhaps the Blues Brothers might have said that. I might be misquoting, but I don't think so. A lot of people say, this is my mission. This is my God-given, it's my job.
Right.
This is my job, Jake, just like you got a job there too. And my job right now is more than just meaningful coincidences. Is doing these podcasts, get this book out, get Synchronicity out into the general public. But my job is to help using synchronicity to help human beings survive, to get that ontological shock we talked about, to see that the mind is not just part of the skull, that we are part of a larger mind, our collective human mind. Our collective human mind has a collective self-observer.
Yes.
And you can use that self-observer to observe the global synchronicities that are happening even more regularly now to help guide humanity to help save itself and its precious ability to be aware.
Yes. My God, yes. And that's a beautiful mission. And we appreciate that mission. And there's so many of us out there fulfilling these roles in these different ways, trying to move this thing forward, because though it does seem like humanity is off course in certain ways, from my perspective, I feel like, yes, things are bad, but there's a greater story. There's a greater evolution of humanity that's unfolding that shows us that we are one human family. And because of that energy, we will unlock that next earth, that new earth where we have that love for each other, where we have technology and the ability to share in a way that's truly bound in love. And when we get to that place, the yin yang law of the universe will still exist, but how we define the low and the high will be completely different, much like moving up an octave in music. What was once high C is now low C, and high C is way up here. So the law of yin and yang still happens, but it's defined differently. In fact, the yang part can be just under pure light, and we can get there. I believe we can.
Would you review what you just said and make a song out of it, please? Because I want to. I am singing that. I'm part of the chorus of what you were just singing. But when I leave the chorus and the beautiful sentiments and the heartfelt desire and knowing that you have, I say, how are we going to do it? How are we going to do it? And to get to where you just described, and I am a psychiatrist. I am a doctor, and the humanity is my patient. So that's why I'm calling it psychotherapy for the collective human organism. I'm developing a psychotherapy in which guys like you can participate in becoming part of the collective self-observer so that I can join with you and other people who can get along with each other. Because if you're going to be part of this collective self-observer thing, you got to know how to get along with each other. And better than that, you got to know how to be able to communicate. And so I'm developing some ideas about communication, which I want to hear what you think about them, that I think these words we're using are really cumbersome because they mean different things to different people. And what I want to be able to do more of is tune people into how we can read each other's electrobiomagnetic fields, because there's information in each of our fields.
Right.
And when we come together, we can pick up stuff. They're like little pieces of paper written on the biofields that we can read emotionally, and they get to our minds. So that's one form of communication. But the one I really am hoping we can develop, which I am trying to develop myself, is that I can talk to you slowly about dancing with lavender and how in my mind, I was imagining I am now dancing with lavender, and how it's such a beautiful experience feeling her energy and feeling our energy together, and how we separate on the dance floor and then we're drawn back together again and happy to come back together again, and the vibes that we're feeling with each other, and that I can be imagining that as I'm telling you. And that my words become a kind of ladder for you to climb up to see what I'm imagining. So we can use words to augment our telepathic communication.
Yes, it's definitely necessary, I believe. And like you're saying, the language, it can mean different things for different people, but there are ways to express yourself that, for a human, I should say, ways to express themselves that don't, there's just almost like judgment words or like personifying words that make it about the person and can confuse people. But really, it's just changing the language to help people get connected with a collective consciousness, or the collective unconscious, like you're saying, is really what ends up being like a universal language. At least that's what I've experienced as a podcast.
Please tell me how you're developing the universal language. So I'd like to know.
It's really just about how the frequency of the words hit the person's consciousness. Now, I love reggae music, and I love the Rastafarian religion, and there's a lot of magic and mysticism there, but they have a concept called word, sound, and power. So they will change the language around words to change the frequency. So instead, for instance, instead of saying something like dedicated, you would say livicated. So this is livicated. You know what I'm saying? You're changing the energy from death to life. And there's so many words out there that kind of have this weight or a negative energy that just with a little bit of flip, and it's all language and phonetics and sound and frequency, with a little flip, you can change the energy of that word to be uplifting. Now, I don't go that far with it, but I just try to choose the words that don't blame, that don't judge, that don't personify, but just get people to look at concepts in a way that's non-judgmental and also collective. I'm not saying I have it down, but that's kind of how I approach it.
Please keep developing that, Jake. And we all need to improve our language, to livicate instead of dedicate. I mean, that one really sticks with me. And I listened to how you describe things, and that a couple of times I said, let's make a song out of those. Your communication is not just with those words, it's with your heart.
Yes.
It's with your enthusiasm for it. It's your excitement. And what comes across when you are energized, you go up a couple of octaves of frequency when you've gotten into a couple of those. And it's that octave of frequency where your words become yet clearer because you are at a higher frequency that's cleaner, I'll say, that's clearer.
Right.
And that is part of what I'm talking about, is to be able to communicate energetically the words, because you had images behind what you were telling me, and you conveyed them in a sort of feeling to me.
Right.
And that's the kind of communication I want to be able to keep doing.
Well, we can do it. I mean, we're doing it. I mean, there's so much energy out there and people doing these things, trying to put love first, to trying to put this energy forward. And they're creating these techniques and these curriculums around this new type of thinking, because what I've learned, and I know you've done a lot of podcasts, I've also interviewed a lot of people and listened to rare lectures from people that have graduated to the next dimension. And what I've learned now is that around the world, everyone is waking up to the same type of information, and they're saying it relatively the same way. They have a personal spin on it, but they're all talking about humanity's ascension, getting downloads of activation from these other beings, whether they're angelics or galactics or Mother Mary or Source or Jesus or Buddha. They're getting these downloads, and everyone is saying the same thing, that now is the time, and this is the activation point towards the next step. And these coincidences and synchronicities are, again, a language of that, which is so huge. But I want to ask you, do you feel like as telepathy increases, as we start to integrate these understandings, that the synchronicities will be seen as less abnormal, almost like a normal form of language, a normal part of daily life?
That's the idea. Yep.
My God. Oh, and I want to ask you about this. My God. This has been an incredible interview, by the way. So many great points and so much high frequency information. What do you know about the Mandela effect? And how does this connect with synchronicities? Because in a way, it's synchronistic that millions of people have these memories of things that happen differently than how they are now. Do you know about the Mandela effect? You do not. Oh, I can't believe I get to enlighten you about this. This is mind-blowing. Thank you, God. This is so fun. Okay. Nelson Mandela. Many, many people, millions of people around the world have a memory, a true, very vivid memory of him dying in prison in South Africa. never becoming president of South Africa, never ending apartheid, things like that. And they have this residual memory. And that's where it started. That was the beginning of the Mandela effect. And then people started noticing other anomalies. The Berenstain Bears was a very popular one. All of a sudden, I grew up with those books. Berenstain Bears, Stein, Berenstain Bears. You look at the books now, it's the Berenstain Bears, Stain, and it's always been the Berenstain Bears, right? There's other anomalies. A lot of it has to do with scenes changing. In the Disney movie, I believe it's Snow White, mirror, mirror on the wall, right? Everybody knows mirror, mirror on the wall. Well, supposedly that never happened. Now it's magic mirror on the wall. And it's never been mirror, mirror on the wall. And there's several of these Mandela effects. JFK, the assassination, there used to be 4 people in the car. Now there's 6 people in the car. There's all of these strange residual anomalies that are almost synchronicities in themselves because so many people are having the memories of this other world or this other timeline. What do you think about that?
I'm thinking about that.
You got to take the deep dive on that, man.
Because I got a little confused by the Mandela effect that he died in prison.
Right.
And our memory of it is that, as you said, apartheid and president is what emerged from that. And what you're saying with that and the other things, that the things that we see now, I think are really what happened now, didn't happen. And the Berenstain Bears is a shift in the other direction.
Right.
Like we remember the Berenstain Bears, and maybe that's the same as Mandela being elected president and ending apartheid. So, and the number of people in the car with Kennedy. So it's like what we remember, what we're told now, and what we remember happening are not the same thing.
Right.
So and that's what I think you're saying.
And people have very clear, vivid, distinct memories so embedded in their consciousness that there's no way it could be any other way. And there's millions of people experiencing this.
I have to admit that I thought Mandela died in jail.
You're from the Mandela died in jail timeline. Oh my God. This is mind blowing.
Well, I've also gotten into the more present one too. I can see both of, I see both of them, but now that you talk about it, that's the idea that he survived all that really imprisonment and all those years became kind of hard to believe. Because there's some sense that he died in prison in me too. It's like I can hold both of them with the more recent history being because you see pictures of him, and somehow you're talking about different timelines, and that's what you're trying to be able to say, that these people are reporting being able to move between timelines of reality, and that. You've heard probably more than I, where people talk about moving timelines. The closest I've gotten to that is being in what my friend calls the 5th dimension versus the 3rd dimension. Is the 5th dimension somehow related to any of this that you're the Mandela
not
thing?
necessarily, but it's probably, of course, it's a part of it. But really, it's about these people are thinking it's some sort of timeline shifts. The theory is that the CERN Hadron Collider is literally disturbing the fabric of reality and moving us around to different timelines that are close to ours. There's various theories.
Okay, because you're telling me something I didn't know, so I really appreciate
I'm just like
that.
blown away. This is amazing. I get to tell you that. I feel honored.
Well, thank you. I feel blessed. So that's because I read about the timeline thing, kind of people mentioning it, but that we move between timelines. for me has been moving the term the fifth dimension with this friend of mine who we love each other in the fifth dimension is what happens. In this dimension, it's not so real. And I make it up more than she does, although it's still here and I can tell her, and I think so. I mean, I don't know if I'm making it up. So there's the reality of this dimension and there's the reality of the fifth dimension. And the last time I saw her in person, she's walking down the driveway and she says, "See you in the fifth dimension." And there's kind of ways in which that reminds me of moving between timelines, is that's one timeline we're calling the fifth dimension. And then there's this third dimension. And she's very different in each one of those. So I'm living on both of them with her around the same time.
Wow, that's really mind-blowing. There's just so much information there. I was just wondering if you had heard about this and how it kind of connected to synchronicities, but we'll have to revisit this the next time that you're on after you take the deep dive. But I will tell you very briefly, I'll just tell you my experience with it. When I was a child in the 90s, early 90s, I was a teenager. I watched the movie and read the books by Anne Rice, Interview with a Vampire. And I remember there was the movie poster. Tom Cruise was in the movie. It was Interview with a Vampire, and it had a blood red A. Like it was like Interview with, and it was like in normal font. And then you had this like blood red A, and then you had the vampire back in that normal font. Burned in my consciousness. I watched that movie probably too many times. And it was very, very embedded in my consciousness, right? So then years later, as I'm doing this podcast, I'm researching the Mandela effect. And it turns out that there's a Mandela effect related to Interview with a Vampire, because it's not Interview with a Vampire anymore. It's Interview with the Vampire. And there was never a red A. The red A never existed. That one shocked me because this wasn't like a letter shift or something like that. This was a complete artistic logo change. It was mind-blowing. And as I took a deep dive on this, I found that there were other people that remembered the blood red A and described it in the exact same way that I did. Isn't that mind-blowing? Still trying to wrap my head around that.
Oh, it's a clue, Jake. It's a clue. When I hear a lot of people are experiencing something similar, that's a global synchronicity.
Right.
And when I hear that confluence of thinking, then I say there's something meaningful in this global synchronicity that humanity and I can learn something from. So I activate my own self-observer from the perspective of the collective self-observer, and I say, how does it potentially help humanity survive its own destruction, And that's the clue that I get from what you just told me.
Yes, there's something helping us along. And just to align with that statement, some people believe that as we make mistakes as humans, perhaps blow up the planet, blow up the galaxy, the universe, that the divine is just kind of moving us over to the next closest timeline as we continue our ascensions. It's almost like a fail-safe for the human experience. I'm not sure though, but I am sure that your book is absolutely amazing. I love your book. It was so fun to read because it was so personal and it had so many things that I personally am interested in. I want to tell people where to find it. Amazon, all the places. Life-Changing Synchronicities, A Doctor's Journey of Coincidence and Serendipity. His website is coincider.com. Coincider, COINCIDER.com. He's on Instagram. Bernard Beitman. Incredible interview, Bernard. Absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
This was so synchronistic. And clearly we were attracting each other for a purpose. We had this fluid, beautiful conversation. Is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with before we go?
Activate your self-observer. Recognize that you can observe your own mind, and that includes not just the words, not just the images, but the emotions and the intuitions that are coming into your central processing area, your self-observer, and try to find patterns in them that can help you, and not just you, help those you love continue to evolve towards higher and higher frequencies where you find your own energy signature.
That was absolutely beautiful. And Bernard, of course, we're going to have you back on the show. We're going to continue this. This is just the beginning. And everyone else, my God, go get the book. Check out his website. Check out everything he is about. Listen to what we were talking about. It's so huge. And thank you again so much, Bernard, for being here.
You're welcome, Jake. It was great talking with you. It really was.
It was absolutely amazing. Please hold through the outro music. And people of Earth listening around the world, we will see you next week, midnight on Earth.